All right, everybody, welcome. Just checking in with a video, and again, more context on sort of the state of state of the United States economically. This is a new video from TLDR News, and they're talking about some general things that are happening. I just wanted to highlight one part of this video that really stuck out to me and explains a lot about why the whole U.S. economy is a house of cards and a big, a big fraud at the moment. So let's go ahead and watch, and we'll give context.
Is being driven by the richest Americans,
Hopefully, go
a
back
front
one.
loading of imports we mentioned earlier. What makes all of this even more precarious is that an ever increasing fraction of consumer spending is being driven by the richest Americans. According to analysis by Moody's, the top 10% of earners now account for an unprecedented 50% of consumer spending. Given that
So I had to pause this for a second because I was like, wait, what does he mean? Like, it looks like this chart is not eclipsing 50%, but then you have to go back to like the year over year at the bottom, and you realize that over time, so back in like the mid 1990s, I mean, it still would be abysmal if this was the case, but it was at what about like what 33 or something percent, 33, 35%, sort of at its lowest in the 90s. And then over time, it's just sort of steadily crept up. And this is the core, the crux of the problem of what we're dealing with, is that we are basically living in a society that is propped up almost entirely by millionaires and billionaires. And that's why when people go to through their day-to-day lives, and they're having a hard time paying for the basics like eggs and clothes and just basic goods. Well, that's because these things are perfectly affordable for rich people. These are perfectly affordable if you're making $600,000 a year or what have you, if you make up that top 10% of earners or whatever that cutoff might be. You're having no problem, or those prices are just that is just par for the course. That's just what you're used to paying. But for the 90% that make up the bottom of that chart, you're actually having a really hard time affording those everyday goods. Let's continue.
overall consumer spending is stagnant and the bottom 90% are accounting for an even smaller fraction of it, this implies that 90% of Americans are already basically in a recession. One
90% of Americans already in a recession. Think about that for a second. So the whole US economy being propped up by about 10% of the consumers, 90% of people are struggling. They are barely able to keep up. They're barely able to feel comfortable in their day-to-day lives. And it's just a complete house of cards. Like, what kind of an economy is propped up by just the 10% of people that hoard all the wealth? Meanwhile, everybody else is left struggling. What the fuck? You know?
of the other consequences of this is that it means that the stock market actually really matters. Usually, when people say that the stock market isn't the real economy, they're right. But when the richest Americans are keeping the American economy afloat, the stock market does sort of become the economy. Because rich Americans hold a lot more money in stocks, which means that stock market declines, like the ones we've seen recently, are more likely to discourage them from spending, potentially pushing the US into a recession. Now, not all of this is down to Trump. At least some of the consumer spending that we saw over 2022 and 2023 was driven by savings accumulation.
I've thought about that a lot as well. It's like, why is it that we always hear, the economy and the stock market are not the same thing, and blah blah blah. But every time we've seen in the global recession or global economic crash, it seems like that's coincided with, at least very recently, the decline in the stock market. So that basically makes sense when you consider people that are just propping up and on holding together the economy are these top 10% who also happen to own stocks. So when they finally break down, when their economics finally break down, that's when the rest of the economy, or that's when the rest of the governments step in and realize, oh my God, we have to prop this up, we have to save this thing. So that's basically the message I wanted to get past this morning. Is it's unfortunate. I mean, I don't know. You feel kind of hopeless at the end of the day. You're basically being held captive by these voracious robber baron, criminal, white collar freaks that just want more and more and more. and they allow less and less and less for the rest of us. So that is the sad reality of the United States at the end of the day. And it's not going to get better under Trump, I can tell you that. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys in the next one.